students, welcome to Dr.deepa dahake's NEET Biology, and in today's session, we discuss about the keynotes for NEET 2020 exams. In these notes, I only discuss some of the important notes and important topics which are repeatedly asked in NEET exams, and mainly जो questions हैं इन topics हैं, these questions are of difficulty level, as well as secondly students are also facing the problems in these topics. That's why I have come towards for the preparation of keynotes. Only few days are there for NEET, so with this you boost your preparation. So let's begin with the session. In today's session we mainly discuss about the regulation of human physiology में आप study कर रहे हैं, regulation of respiration and regulation of kidney function, that is excretory system we study when. So here first we discuss about the regulation of respiration. When you study about the regulation of respiration, last topic है chapter का. So when you study about the regulation of respiration, one thing you clearly remember, the role of oxygen is quite insignificant in the regulation of respiration. The major role you remember, major role is played by the concentration of carbon dioxide as well as the concentration of hydrogen ions. So this part first you remember, because the difficulty level and statement based true false type of questions are generally asked from this topic of the gaseous exchange in human physiology. So when we come towards the regulation, so here you remember, what do we understand by regulation? Regulation means the capacity to maintain and moderate the respiratory rhythm. So to maintain the respiratory rhythm, to moderate the respiratory rhythm when we study, then we study about regulation. Here you remember, in human being, the regulation of respiratory center or mechanism of respiration is under control of the nervous system or neural system, and in neural system predominantly hindbrain plays significant role. You as it is go through these notes, the medulla oblongata and pons varolii. These are the two parts of the brain, hindbrain basically, which play significant role in the regulation of the respiration. When we come towards medulla part, so in medulla part you remember, the respiratory rhythm center is responsible. The center which is primarily responsible for regulation. Primarily responsible center, you remember, it is respiratory rhythm center. And besides this respiratory rhythm center, or adjacent to this respiratory rhythm center, the another center is there, that is called as chemosensitive center, or it is called as chemosensitive area. Similarly, when we come towards pons or pons varolii, so in pons you remember, pneumotaxic center is there, the center which is responsible for the neural signal generation. So that we will discuss. First we discuss about the role of respiratory rhythm center. Rhythm ka meaning clear hai. In particular rhythm, we inhale and exhale. When that rhythm is disturbed, then the regulation of that rhythm of respiration or inhalation and exhalation is mainly performed by this center. So here you remember, this is the specialized center, and this statement you remember very well, it primarily responsible for the respiratory rhythm center. After that, when we come towards now, this respiratory rhythm center is mainly under control, or it is functioning under chemosensitive area and the pneumotaxic center of the pons varolii, because pneumotaxic center also provide a message to respiratory rhythm center, and this chemosensitive area also provide a message to the respiratory rhythm center. Now chemosensitive area, when we say, so for what this is a sensitive area, so this you again remember mark kiya hua hai, for carbon dioxide, increased concentration of carbon dioxide and increased concentration of hydrogen ion. When increases in the body, that means the CO2 concentration and hydrogen ion concentration, when increases in body, then this chemosensitive area, the receptor of chemosensitive area gets switch on or they become activated. So here the increase in CO2 concentration and hydrogen ion concentration can activate this area or center, and this area send the message to the respiratory rhythm center. And because of that, when the chemosensitive area detect that the concentration of CO2 is increases in body tissue or body cell, and it get activate and provide message to respiratory rhythm center, at that time you remember the exhalation phenomena is take place when we stop the breathing for few seconds or few minutes, and after that when we begins with the next breathing, so always we begins with exhalation, we never begins with inhalation, because the respiratory rhythm center chemosensitive area are detect the increased concentration of increased concentration of carbon dioxide. They never detect the deficiency in oxygen or increase in oxygen. So this part you remember very well. And now we come towards the pons varoli. When we come towards pons varoli, so here you remember the center, pneumotaxic center. This center, what is the function of pneumotaxic center? It moderate the function of respiratory rhythm center. If the rhythm center start activity and the activity of rhythm center is suddenly increases, so to moderate that activity, you remember the pneumotactic center is responsible. Now the neural signal from this center, so signal कैसे develop हो रहे हैं ये भी याद रखना है. Neural signals are developed from this center, and these neural signal reduces, again this is one of the most important thing, it reduces the duration of inspiration, and oppositely question आता है तो याद रखिए कि it increases the duration of exhalation, because CO2 को release करना first requirement होता है body का. So it reduces the duration of inspiration, and in that way it alters the respiration rate. This statement already asked true and false type. So you pay attention while reading the mechanism of respiration, regulation of the respiration. And some another receptors for carbon dioxide and hydrogen ion concentration are present in addition to brain or in addition to neural system. Receptors you remember are present at aortic arch and carotid artery. This part you remember. The aortic arch and carotid artery show the receptors which detect, again these receptors also detect the increase in carbon dioxide concentration as well as increase in hydrogen ion concentration. When hydrogen ion concentration increases, that means the body fluid pH क्या होगा आपका, acidity of the pH increases, और in another way question raise हो सकता है कि pH of the body fluid decreases. So any kind of questions you remember the hydrogen ion concentration when increase, CO2 concentration when increase, then the receptors of aortic arch and carotid artery become activate, and again the receptor of these sites also provide a signal to the rhythm centers. All chemosensitive center, pneumotaxic center, receptors of the carotid artery and aortic arch, they are responsible towards the respiratory rhythm center, and that's why we say the respiratory rhythm center is primarily responsible for the process of regulation of respiration. So this much you remember for the regulation of respiration. And now we come towards the regulation of kidney function. Kidney function means that how does the process of excretion is under regulation in human beings. When you go through the revision of excretory system in humans from human physiology, so you very well pay attention on counter current mechanism and the diagrams which are provided, because most of the time repeatedly questions are asked in competitive exam from the counter current mechanism. Now we come towards the kidney functions regulation. Regulation of the kidney function is mainly by three: hypothalamus, JGA apparatus, and at short extent or at very short functioning है यहाँ पर हार्ट की, ये पार्ट याद रखिए. Hypothalamus and JGA play major role and heart play a very short extent पे role play करते हैं. When both hypothalamus and JGA activate, so to control the activity of hypothalamus and JGA, heart is start its functioning. How it is take place? that we study. So here you remember hypothalamus. Hypothalamus you remember, when we come towards the hypothalamus, so osmoreceptor again here present, and these osmoreceptors are responsible for the activation of the hypothalamus. And what does these hypothalamus detect? These three things you always remember. Question आपका generally आ चुका है कि osmoreceptors are not detect the change in. Detect किस में कर रहे हैं ये अगर आपको याद है, so you can easily find out कि what is not to be detected by the osmoreceptor. So osmoreceptor detect the change in body fluid volume. Here body fluid volume and ionic concentration. So this part you remember, fluid volume, body fluid volume and ionic concentration. Now here you remember, when hypothalamus start its regulation over the kidney function. So why hypothalamus says activate first, तो ये समझिए. So first, when there is an excessive loss of fluid from the body, that means when the diuresis begins and excessive losses take place from the body, in that condition the osmoreceptors get activate. The osmoreceptor mainly activate होते हैं when there is an excessive loss of body fluid. Due to activity of osmoreceptors, these active osmoreceptors provide a message to hypothalamus, and because of that hypothalamus get stimulate or activate. Hypothalamus ये आपको याद होगा, whenever hypothalamus activated, either it gives message to anterior pituitary or it gives message to posterior pituitary. In case of kidney function, hypothalamus start to activate the neurohypophysis. This part you remember, and in response to hypothalamus message, neurohypophysis start to release the antidiuretic hormone that is called ADH, और इसी को आप कह रहे हैं vasopressin. So ADH or vasopressin, firstly you remember, the ADH or vasopressin is releases by the neurohypophysis. Pituitary gland recall करिए, so you know what is neurohypophysis. Now this ADH and vasopressin, this statement you mug up very well. Number of time आ रहा है ये, the true and false type of statement में recent 3 years के question paper में भी आपको ये statement मिलेगा. Statement based question. ADH facilitate water reabsorption from later part of the tubule. If the question is related with later part of tubule, then it is ADH. If the question is related with distal part of tubule, that means you remember the aldosterone is responsible for that process. So here you remember, in presence of ADH, water reabsorption begins from later part of tubule, because the later part of tubule in healthy person or under normal conditions impermeable for water, but now under the influence of ADH it become permeable for water and start to reabsorb the water, and because of that the phenomena of diuresis get prevented. As the diuresis get prevented, slowly the body fluid volume increases, and the receptors आपके activate थे, these activated receptors become switch off, and the entire process of ADH secretion automatically stops in humans. Second effect of ADH, you remember, ADH or vasopressin, these two statements are very important for NEET exam. ADH or vasopressin, you remember, is strong vasoconstrictor, and because of that they constrict the diameter of blood vessels in kidney, and because of that you remember the glomerular filtration rate, glomerular blood pressure increases, and the process of filtration of blood is now comes at a normal level or at a normal rate. So this part you remember, that how the processes take place. So hypothalamus mainly responsible for ADH and vasopressin, but ADH or vasopressin you remember is secreted by neurohypophysis under the influence of hypothalamus. ADH reabsorb water from later part, as well as it is a strong vasoconstrictor, in short, that you remember. Now we come towards the JG apparatus. JG apparatus, juxtaglomerular apparatus, which is made up of JG cells or juxtaglomerular cells of the afferent and efferent arteriole, macula densa cells of the DCT, and lacis cells are present in between these two cells. All the three cells combine to form JG apparatus. Now JG apparatus, you remember, complex regulatory role play करते हैं. These words you remember, simple, complex, complicate. So it play a complex regulatory role. And how does the JGA gate activate? As when the excessive loss of fluid is take place from the body, so automatically blood pressure goes down, and because of that the glomerular filtration rate or glomerular filtration pressure is decreases. So here you remember, fall in GFR or fall in glomerular blood flow is responsible for the activation of JG cells which are present in afferent and efferent arterioles. As these JG cells are activated, these cells are responsible for the renin secretion. So they're responsible for the release of renin. So renin hormones start to release from here. Now this renin, you remember, responsible for the conversion of angiotensinogen into angiotensin 1 and angiotensin 2. This you remember. And this angiotensin 2, what is the role of angiotensin 2? So angiotensin 2, you remember, again it is similar to vasopressin. Angiotensin 2 also a strong or powerful vasoconstrictor. So here you remember the pair of chemicals which are strong vasoconstrictor. So for that you remember vasopressin and angiotensin 2. When it become a vasoconstrictor, so its function is just like a vasopressin and it responsible to increase the GFR or glomerular filtration pressure. At the same time, this angiotensin 2 activate on the adrenal cortex. Adrenal cortex means, you remember, the cortex, adrenal gland present above the kidney, and the gland is also made up of outer cortex and inner medulla region. So here it activates on the adrenal cortex. And why it activates? It responsible to release the aldosterone. Now aldosterone, you remember, aldosterone is responsible for reabsorption of sodium ion and water from the distal part of the tubule. So if you have any confusion, because most of this time students put the wrong answers, they confuse the function of aldosterone with ADH. ADH is only responsible for the reabsorption of water, as well as ADH reabsorb the water from later part of tubule. But when we come towards aldosterone, aldosterone increases the permeability of distal part of nephron for sodium ion as well as for the water, and because of that the reabsorption of sodium ion and water is increases. And again, when the reabsorption of water is increases, so diuresis phenomena is prevented. Slowly the body fluid volume comes in its normal position, and after that the process, as the GFR or GFP increases, the JG cells stop to release the renin and automatically the process gets stopped. So this part you remember. Now what is happening? The vasopressin as well as angiotensin 2, both are vasoconstrictor. So because of the functioning of both, the vessels start to constrict and suddenly the blood pressure is increases. When sudden increase in blood pressure is detected by the wall of atria, then the wall of atria of the heart start to release the atrial natriuretic factor, that is called as ANF. And ANF, you remember, against vasopressin and angiotensin 2, the ANF is vasodilatory in function. That means the vessels which are to be constricted under the influence of ANF, vessels start to dilate and the blood pressure which is to be increases, that pressure comes to the normal level. So this part you remember. The statement, this statement also you remember. ANF is a check on RAS. Now what is RAS? RAS we study. RAS full name form you remember. Renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. So to control or to check the functioning of kidney, hypothalamus and JGA combinedly develop one system. That system is called as RAS. When RAS is under functioning, the blood pressure in body increases, and to check that increase in blood pressure or to maintain that blood pressure, the ANF is releases from the heart, atria of the heart, and that's why we say ANF is the check on RAS. So this much you remember. For at the end of the session, for just 1 minute or 2 minutes, I come away from the board. So if you want to take a screenshot, so you can take a screenshot of these notes, because these are the most important topics for your NEET 2020 exams. So for today's session in Keynote series, I only select the regulation of respiration and regulation of kidney function. In next, we will discuss about the muscle contraction and their regulation. So stay connected with the Dr.deepa NEET Biology. And students who are new for the session, they kindly like my videos, subscribe my channel and stay connected with the channel. Up to next session, stay motivated and stay blessed.